Cambridge IELTS 2 by the University of Cambridge Local Examination Syndicate. Published by Cambridge University Press, 2000. This recording is copyright. Cassette 1, Side 1. Test 1. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1. Section 1. Louise wants to join a video library. You will hear a conversation between Louise and the owner of the video library. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Oh, hello. I'd like to join the video library.
OK, would you like to fill in the application form now?
Yes, I can do it now.
Hold on and I'll get a form. Now, I'll just ask you a few questions and then I'll get you to sign at the bottom.
Right.
What's your full name?
Louise Cynthia Jones.
Jones.
Yes, that's right.
Louise's surname is Jones, so Jones has been written on the form. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 5.
Oh, hello. I'd like to join the video library.
OK, would you like to fill in the application form now?
Yes, I can do it now.
Hold on and I'll get a form. Now, I'll just ask you a few questions and then I'll get you to sign at the bottom.
Right.
What's your full name?
Louise Cynthia Jones.
Jones.
Yes, that's right.
OK. And what's your address?
Apartment 1, 72 Black Street, Highbridge.
Black Street. That's just round the corner, isn't it?
Yes.
OK, so the postcode is 2085, right?
Yes, 2085.
And your telephone number? I need both home and work.
Home is 9835-6712, and work is 9456-1309. Do you need any ID or anything like that?
Yes, we need your driver's license number. That is, if you have one.
Yes, I know it off by heart. It's an easy one. 2020BD. Do you need to see it?
Yes, I'm afraid I do.
Here.
Right, thanks. And could you tell me your date of birth, please?
25 July, 1977.
That's the most important part out of the way, but could I just ask you a few questions for a survey we're conducting?
Okay.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 6 to 10.
What kind of videos do you prefer to watch? Have a look at this list.
Well, I love anything that makes me laugh. I just love to hear jokes and funny punchlines. I'm not very keen on westerns, although my father likes them. But I'm a real softie, so anything with a bit of a love story is good for me. It doesn't matter how old. Not musicals, though. They're too much.
Anything else?
I'm completely taken by documentaries of the great outdoors. You know the sort, animals, plants, and faraway places. I saw a wonderful one on dolphins last week. It was amazing.
Now, I think that's all from me, except I need you to sign here on the line. Here's a pen. Oh, and I nearly forgot the membership fee. $25 refundable if you leave the library for any reason.
There you are. And do I sign here?
Yes, that's it. You can borrow videos now if you like, but your card won't be ready until next week. You can come and pick it up when you bring your first videos back. That is, if you want to take some now.
Yes, I'd like to. I'll have a look around.
Fine.
That is the end of section 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a radio interview about an expedition across the Atura Mountains. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully to the interview and answer questions 11 to 15.
A dream came true in 1995 when, over 96 days of the spring and summer, an expedition of 4 men undertook what they believed to have been the first and only complete end-to-end crossing of Morocco's Atura Mountains. I talked to Charles Owen, the leader of the expedition group, about the trip. Charles, how much planning went on beforehand?
Well, as you know, I run these walking trips across the mountains for tourists, and over the years I've collected maps and other data to prepare what I call a route book for this trip. And this book basically shows the route across the mountains that we took.
You actually broke records while you were out there, didn't you?
Yes, it was 900 miles in total, and we managed to climb 32 peaks that were over 3,000 meters high, including Tube Karl, which is, of course, the highest in North Africa.
Yeah.
We weren't actually out to make a name for ourselves. It just happened, really.
What was the weather like?
Oh, it got us right from day one, and we were pretty taken aback, really, to find that it rained on quite a number of days. And so we were forced to start replanning our route almost from the outset. One of the obvious problems is the heavy snow which blocks the mountain passes, so you have to make considerable detours. When we were on the way to Imilchil, for example, the snow forced us into a northern bypass, which was new to us. But anyway, either way, we would have been rewarded because, well, we fell upon amazing high meadows, huge gorges, and wonderful snow-capped mountains. The scenery was as fine as any we saw on the trip, and that was how it was every time. Having to take another pass was never a disappointment.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the interview and answer questions 16 to 20.
It was in many ways a social trip, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. We'd arranged to meet up with friends at various points on the journey. I mean, this was actually one of the purposes of the trip.
Right.
And we managed to keep all these dates, which, well, it's amazing, really, considering the detours we made. An old friend acted as a sort of transport organizer for everyone, and the Hotel Alley in Marrakesh was a good social base. I'd really recommend it, although I can't remember who runs it. Anyway, groups of friends actually joined us for 3-week stints, and others just linked up with us. Some, whom we hadn't met before the trip at all, tagged on for short bursts, people from the area who just came along for the ride. But outside the major visitor areas like Toubkal, we only met one other group of travellers like ourselves in the whole 96 days.
Were there any bad moments?
Well, we took 2, I must say, long-suffering donkeys with us to help transport water and tents and things.
Yeah.
I suppose if we were to do it all again, we'd probably hire donkeys along the way.
Oh, right.
Taza and Tamri, as we called them, after the last places in the trip, well, they made quite a unique journey between them. And, well, but it was continuously demanding for them. On both the really high summits, they took diversions that were quite out of character, and I can only assume that it must have been due to tiredness.
Well, thank you. And Charles has put together a video about this journey and continues to lead groups to the Atora Mountains. So if you want further information...
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear 2 new students, Jane and Tim, talking about their university studies. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully to the discussion and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Tim.
Jane,
How are you?
fine.
I've been wondering when I've run into you. Have you been here long?
I arrived yesterday, on Sunday. How about you?
I got here a few days ago, on Saturday. No, wait a minute. What's today? Sorry, Friday, not Saturday.
But we didn't have to be here till today.
Yes, I know. But I wanted to get my things moved into my room and just take a look around. So, did you decide to do English in the end?
No, I changed my mind and opted for history instead.
Ah.
And you're doing biology, if I remember correctly.
Yes, although to start with, I couldn't decide between that and geography.
How much reading have you got? I was given an amazingly long list of books to read. See?
Wow, it does look pretty long.
Well, I counted 57. I could hardly believe it. What's your list like?
Well, it's not as long as yours, but it's still pretty big. There are 43. I don't know how I'm going to get through them all.
Well, you don't have to read them all this week. You just have to stay ahead of the lectures and seminars. Have you got your class schedule yet?
Yep, it came with a reading list. When's your first lecture?
Tuesday. How about you?
The day after. It's my busiest day. I've got 2 lectures in the morning and 1 in the afternoon.
Before the discussion continues, You have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 30.
It's going to be different from school, isn't it?
Yeah, particularly the lectures. Have you got any special strategy for listening to lectures?
Well, I'm going to use a cassette recorder and record them all.
What? Are you allowed to?
Sure, lots of people do it nowadays. It means you can listen to the lectures all over again later and make really good notes.
I couldn't do that. I like to take notes as I'm listening. I usually find I get all the important points. Reading is different, of course. My approach is to skim the book first to see what's important and what isn't. It saves hours of time.
But what if you miss something?
You don't mean you're going to read every word, do you?
Well, that's what I usually do.
Well, that's up to you, but I think you're crazy.
What's your first lecture on, anyway?
Oh, it's a lecture on the French Revolution.
The French Revolution, how boring.
Oh, it's not boring at all. It was an amazing period of history. It changed everything in Europe. So what's your first lecture about?
It's about animal behaviour. It sounds really interesting.
Look, I was on my way to the library. I'm going to get some of these books out and start reading for the first essay I've got to write.
And what have you got to write about?
No, you'll never believe it. I think our professor must have a sense of humour. He's given us the title, Why Study History?
That's a good one. When you find the answer, let me know.
And I'm going to enjoy writing it. Have you been given any writing assignments yet?
Yes, I've got to write about animal language.
That sounds a challenge. I suppose you'll be off to the zoo to do field research.
That is the end of section 3. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecture being given to school leavers on the jobs people can get in sport and the training programs available to prepare for those jobs. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Welcome to Further Education Information Week. This is the Physical Education Faculty session, and I'm the head of the faculty. During the course of this morning, we hope to give you a clear idea of what we offer in our training programs, and we will look at the types of courses and the entry requirements, if any, for those courses. Some of these courses are open to school leavers, but for some, you need previous qualifications or relevant successful employment. So, firstly, the Physical Fitness Instructors course is offered as a 6-month certificate course, which includes an important component of personal fitness. but there are no specific entry requirements. For sports administrators, we provide a 4-month certificate course, but you should be aware that this is designed for those who are in employment. This employment must be current and related to sports administration. For the sports psychologist course, we offer a 1-year diploma course, but this diploma course is available only to those who already hold a degree in psychology. So you need to make sure you have that before you apply to do this course. Now, for physical education teachers, we offer a 4-year degree in education. This degree course is designed for preparing students to teach in primary and secondary schools and needs no prior qualifications, as it is entered directly by school leavers. And lastly, for the recreation officers course, we offer a 6-month certificate. Entry to this course normally includes applicants of a wide range of ages and experiences, but we do not insist on any prerequisites for this course. Remember that this is a vocational training institute. We train you so that you can take up a particular kind of job. So it is important that you know the main roles of the jobs, what the work is like, and what kind of qualities you need to succeed at them. A physical fitness instructor works in health and fitness centres, preparing individual programs for ordinary members of the public. Physical fitness instructors prepare routines of exercises to suit the individual client's age and level of fitness. Sports administrators run clubs and sporting associations. Their duties include such things as booking playing fields with local councils and organising the schedule of games or events for a club. So they need good organisational skills. Sports psychologists spend time with professional athletes, helping them approach competition with a positive mental attitude to enable them to achieve their personal best. They do this by improving motivation and concentration, or assisting with stress management. Physical education, or PE teachers, instruct young students in how to exercise, play sport, and do other recreational activities correctly and safely. PE teachers help the development of coordination, balance, posture, and flexibility, with things like simple catching and throwing skills. They are not expected to be experts in all sports, but must be able to show students the basic techniques involved in a wide range of activities. Recreation officers often find themselves working for local government authorities and local groups. Their aim is to raise people's awareness of healthy lifestyles and improve general fitness through arranging recreational activities for groups of all ages, from the very young to the elderly. There are many other job opportunities which our graduates can look forward to. If you're interested in any of these, then I suggest...
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. That is the end of side 1. Cambridge IELTS 2 by the University of Cambridge Local Examination Syndicate. Published by Cambridge University Press, 2000. This recording is copyright. Cassette 1, Side 2. Test 2. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. Gavin, a newly arrived student, wants to insure the contents of his apartment. He calls an insurance agent to ask for information. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning, Diane Davis. Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like to get some insurance for the contents of my home.
Fine. When did you move into the house?
A couple of weeks ago. And, it's an apartment, actually. I was told by the landlord that it would be a good idea to get some insurance for the furniture and other personal possessions.
Gavin moved into his apartment 2 weeks ago, so B has been circled. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 6.
Good morning, Diane Davis. Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like to get some insurance for the contents of my home.
Fine. When did you move into the house?
A couple of weeks ago. And, it's an apartment, actually. I was told by the landlord that it would be a good idea to get some insurance for the furniture and other personal possessions.
Fine. Well, let's get some details. What kind of apartment is it?
It's a 2-bedroom apartment.
Huh? What floor is it on?
Why do you need to know that?
Because it affects the cost of the insurance. An apartment on the ground floor isn't as protected as others, and there's more chance of a break-in.
Really? I didn't know that. It's on the second floor.
Second. And how much is the rent?
It's $615 per month.
Good. And where is it located?
In Biggins Street, South Hills.
I see. And what things did you want to insure?
Well, what do you recommend?
Well, the most important things are those which you would normally find in a home. Things like the television, fridge, and so on.
I see. Well, I've got a fridge and a stereo system, which I've just bought from a friend.
And how much did you pay for the fridge?
$450.
50 or 15?
50. And the stereo system cost $1,150.
Have you got a television?
Yes, but it's very old and not worth much.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to insure?
Yes. I've got a couple of watches and my CDs and books.
How much do you think they're worth?
The watches are worth $1,000?
For both of them?
No, each one. And altogether, the CDs and books cost me about $400.
Okay. So the value of everything you want to insure is $4,000.
How much will the insurance cost?
Let me see. $4,000 divided by plus 10%. Right. So this kind of insurance, that's private contents insurance, it comes to $184 for a 12-month period.
$184? Well, that sounds pretty good. Okay, I'll take that policy.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 7 to 10.
Can I arrange the policy over the phone?
Sure. Just let me get the details down. So, that's Mr.
Gavin Murray. That's M-U-R-R-A-Y.
And the address is?
It's 16C, Biggins Street, South Hills.
Okay. 16C, Biggins Street, South Hills?
That's right. It's 2 words. South Hills.
And your date of birth is?
12th of November, 1980.
And your contact number?
Home phone number is 9872 4855.
Right. And, you're Australian?
No, I was born in London, although my mother is from Tasmania.
Oh, really? Whereabouts?
Hobart.
I see. Interesting place. Now, are you working at the moment?
No, I'm a full-time student at Sydney University.
Right. Good.
That is the end of section 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear an address by the college president welcoming new students to a residential college. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 14.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all here. Welcome to Smith House. Smith House, as you may or may not know, is one of the oldest residential colleges of the university. As you can see, the building you're in now, which contains this main lounge, the dining room, the recreation room, the kitchen and the offices, was part of the original old house built in the 1840s to be used by the family of George Smith. That's, of course, how the house and college got their names. The original house was converted into a residential college for the university in 1940, and since then has continued to be added on to and modernised. You'll notice when you receive your room allocation in a few minutes that your room number either begins with the letter N, S or W, like this one here. The first letter refers to the three wings of the college, which come away from this main building. Of course, the letters represent the three directions, in this case, north, south and west. Each wing has 2 floors, and so the next number you see is either 1 or in this case 2, and this indicates which floor your room is on. The number after that is your individual room number. So it's quite simple to find any room by going to the right wing, then floor, and then room number.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 15 to 20.
You'll also notice, when you receive your orientation pack shortly, that there are 2 keys. One is the key to your room, and only you have that key, and the other is a key to the front door, which you've just come through here from the street. This door is closed and locked at 8 p.m. every night, and opened again at 7 a.m. You'll need your key if you're coming back to the college between those times. We ask all students to always enter and leave the college through the front door. You'll notice at the end of each corridor that there is another door, but these are fire doors and are kept locked from the outside. They should only be opened from the inside in case of emergency. In your fees you've paid a laundry fee which covers the cleaning of bed linen and towels. All bed linen and towels are clearly embossed with the name Smith House, so it's easily identifiable. If you want your other laundry to be done by the college, this can be arranged for a small extra fee. There are only a few rules here at Smith House, and we have these rules so that we can all live comfortably together. The most important rule is that there must be no noise after 9 p.m. There is also no smoking in the rooms or anywhere inside the college, but smoking is permitted on the balconies. All meals are served in the dining room. Meal times are listed in your orientation pack. Please read these carefully, as meal times cannot be changed, and if you arrive late, I'm sorry to say, you'll just go hungry. If you're unsure about things, each floor has an elected floor senior, who is usually a student in their 3rd or 4th year of study, who's been at Smith House for a while. The floor seniors will introduce themselves later today and answer any questions you have. But for now, I'm going to hand you over to Marnie, who is going to give you the orientation packs and keys. Thanks, Marnie.
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between 2 students, Lynn and Robin, who are discussing an assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 21 to 30.
That essay we have to write, the one on how children learn through the media, how are you planning to write it?
Well, I've given it some thought, and I think that the best way to approach it is to divide the essay into two parts. First of all, we'd have to look at some examples of each type of media.
Yes, what they are. Then we could describe how we can use each medium so that children can learn something from each one.
Exactly. Maybe we could draw up a table and look at examples of each medium in turn. Let's see. The different forms of media would be the print media.
Here you'd have things like books and newspapers, that sort of thing.
And included in these are the pictorial forms of print media, like maps.
Yes, maps are really just formal pictures, aren't they? And then there are what we call the audio forms of media, where children can listen. CDs and radios are probably the best examples because a lot of children have access to these, especially radios.
And this would lead into the audio-visual media, which can be seen as well as heard. Film, television, and we mustn't forget videos.
Yes, but there's a final category as well. Computers that make up the so-called electronic media. In the United Kingdom and Australia, they say that 1 in 3 families has a computer now.
Yes, I believe it. Well, that's a good list to start with. We're really getting somewhere with this essay now. So let's move on to when each type of medium could be used. I guess we could start by trying to identify the best situation for each type of media.
What do you mean?
I'm talking about whether each medium should be used with different size groups. For example, we could look at pictures and ask whether they're more useful for an individual child, a few children together, or a full class. In this case, I'd say pictures are best with individual children because they give them an opportunity to let their imaginations run wild.
Yes, I see.
Let's take tapes next. Although tapes look ideal for individual children, I feel they're best suited to small group work. This way, children don't feel isolated because they can get help from their friends. The computers are the same. I think they're better with small numbers of children, and they're hardly ever useful with a whole class. Videos, however, are ideal for use with everyone present in the class, especially when children have individual activity sheets to help them focus their minds on what's in the video.
And what about books? What would you recommend for them? Books are ideal for children to use by themselves. I know they're used with groups in schools, but I wouldn't recommend it. Other pictorial media like maps, though, are different. I'd always plan group work around those. Give the children a chance to interact and to share ideas.
I agree. Teachers often just leave maps on the wall for children to look at when they have some free time. But kids really enjoy using them for problem solving.
Yes. Different people have different ideas, I suppose.
Yeah, and different teachers recommend different tools for different age groups.
That is the end of section 3. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer talking to a group of students at the beginning of a course in rural development. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully to the talk and answer questions 31 to 40.
I hope that this first session, which I've called an Introduction to British Agriculture, will provide a helpful background to the farm visits you'll be doing next week. I think I should start by emphasising that agriculture still accounts for a very important part of this country's economy. We are used to hearing the UK's society and economy described as being industrial or even post-industrial, but we mustn't let this blind us to the fact that agriculture and its supporting industries still account for around 20% of our gross national product. This figure is especially impressive, I think, when you bear in mind how very small a percentage of the UK workforce is employed in agriculture. This is not a recent development. You'd have to go back to 1750 or so to find a majority of the workforce in this country working in agriculture. By the middle of the next century, in 1850 that is, it had fallen sharply to 10%, and then to 3% by the middle of the 20th century. And now, just 2% of the workforce contribute 20% of GNP. How is this efficiency achieved? Well, my own view is that it owes a great deal to a history over the last 50 or 60 years of intelligent support by the state, mainly taking the form of helping farmers to plan ahead. Then the two other factors I should mention, both very important, are the high level of training amongst the agricultural workforce, and secondly, the recognition by farmers of the value of investing in technology. Now, although the UK is a fairly small country, the geology and climate vary a good deal from region to region. For our purposes today, we can divide the country broadly into three. I've marked them on the map here. The region you'll get to know best, of course, is the north, where we are at present. The land here is generally hilly, and the soils thin. The climate up here, and you've already had evidence of this, is generally cool and wet. As you'll see next week, the typical farm here in the north is a small, family-run concern, producing mainly wool and timber for the market. If we contrast that with the eastern region, over here, the east is flatter and more low-lying, with fertile soils and a mixed climate. Average farm size is much bigger in the east, and farms are likely to be managed strictly on commercial lines. As for crops, well, the east is the UK's great cereal-producing region. However, increasingly significant areas are now also given over to high-quality vegetables for supply direct to the supermarkets. The third broad region is the west, where it's a different story again. The climate is warmer than in the north and much wetter than in the east. The resulting rich soils in the west provide excellent pasture, and the farms there are quite large, typically around 800 hectares. The main products are milk, cheese and meat. So, clearly, there are marked differences between regions, but this does not prevent quite a strong sense of solidarity amongst the farming community as a whole, right across the country. This solidarity comes in part from the need to present a united front in dealing with other powerful interest groups, such as government or the media. It also owes something to the close cooperation between all the agricultural training colleges, through which the great majority of farmers pass at the beginning of their careers. And a third factor making for solidarity is the national structure of the Farmers' Union, of which virtually all farmers are members. Finally, in this short talk, I'd like to say a little about the challenges facing farmers in the next century.
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you would now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet. That is the end of side 2. Cambridge IELTS 2 by the University of Cambridge Local Examination Syndicate. Published by Cambridge University Press, 2000. This recording is copyright. Cassette 2, Side 1. Test 3. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear someone being asked their opinion of a new television station. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but would you have time to answer a few questions?
What's it about?
We're doing some market research for a new television channel starting in 2 years' time.
Okay, why not?
Lovely. We'll just work through this form. And if we could start with some personal background information?
Sure.
Right. If I could just have your age?
35.
Right. Great.
The respondent is 35 years old, so B has been circled. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 4.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but would you have time to answer a few questions?
What's it about?
We're doing some market research for a new television channel starting in 2 years' time.
Okay, why not?
Lovely. We'll just work through this form. And if we could start with some personal background information?
Sure.
Right. If I could just have your age?
35.
Right. Great. And your job?
Systems analyst. But for the form, I don't know whether it would count as professional or business or what.
What do you think?
Okay, it's more like business.
Fine. And would you mind my asking about your salary, or we can leave it blank?
No, I don't mind. It's 40,000 a year.
Oh, thank you. Right. About your current watching habits, what would you say is your main reason for watching TV?
Well, at work, I tend to read for information and what have you, so I'd say that with TV, it probably just helps me relax and unwind.
Fine. And how many hours a day, on average, do you watch TV?
Not a lot, really. I should say just over an hour.
You now have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 5 to 10.
So what are the 2 main times of the day that you watch TV?
Well, a little around breakfast time, and then it tends to be really late, 11 or even midnight, when I finish work.
And what sort of programs do you go for?
Some news bulletins, but I also really like to put my feet up with some of the old comedy shows.
Fine. And turning to the new channel, which type of programs would you like to see more of?
Well, I certainly don't think we need any more factual programs, like news and documentaries. I think we need more about things like local information, providing a service for the community. And in the same vein, perhaps more for younger viewers. Good quality stuff.
Uh-huh. And if you had to give the new directors some specific advice when they set up the channel, what advice would you give them?
I think I'd advise them to pay a lot of attention to the quality of the actual broadcast. The sound system. People are very fussy these days about that. And in general, I think they ought to do lots more of these kinds of interview, talking with their potential customers.
Oh, I'm glad you think it's valuable.
Certainly, yeah.
Good. Okay. This will be a commercial channel, of course, but how often do you think it is tolerable to have adverts?
Well, out of that list, I'd say every quarter of an hour. I don't think we can complain about that, as long as they don't last for 10 minutes each time.
Quite. And would you be willing to attend any of our special promotions for the new channel?
Yes, yeah, I'd be very happy to, as long as they're held here in my area.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. And finally, may we put you on our mailing list?
Well, I'd prefer not, except for the information about the promotion you mentioned.
Can I have your name and address?
Of course. Here's my card.
Oh, lovely. And thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you.
Yes, indeed. Thanks.
That is the end of section 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a student welfare officer talking to a small group of students just before the beginning of term. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully to the talk and answer questions 11 to 16.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. My name's Elizabeth Reed, and I'm your Assistant Welfare Officer. What I'd like to do now is tell you a little more about some of the social facilities available on the campus, and also to tell you something about what the town has to offer. As you probably know already, the Student Union Building is the main centre of social life here, as indeed it is in most British universities. The Union runs a weekly programme of events for all tastes. Oh, everything from discos to talks by guest speakers. Many of these events are fundraising activities for charities, which the Union takes very seriously. They manage the Students' Union paper shop, selling magazines and newspapers, as well as stationery, sweets, and so on. Let me see. There's the ticket shop, where you can get some very good deals on, well, for example, coaches to London, or inexpensive charter flights. As cheap as you'll get anywhere, people say. Or tickets for big pop groups playing here, or at other venues all over the country. Or plays in London. Oh, and we mustn't forget the Union cafeteria and the big new diner. Yes, did you have a question?
Yeah, does the Union also provide help with any problems? I mean, advice on financial problems, for example. Or does the university provide that?
Yes, the Union run their own advice service, offering help with financial matters, such as grants. I'm sure you realise anything medical should be discussed with the University Medical Service, which also has an excellent counselling centre. I think that was made clear yesterday. However, the Union has its own officer who can give advice on legal problems.
You now have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 17 to 20.
Now, on to Radford. For a town of its size, Radford has some unusually good leisure and community facilities and has quite a good shopping centre with an interesting range of shops. As you go into Radford, there's a new, well, quite new, Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's on the outskirts at a place called Renton. Above the pool, there's a high-tech fitness centre. Are there any ice skaters here? No? Oh, pity. The facilities for ice skating are excellent. Well, the new Metro Tower, right in the centre of town, has got an ice rink and a sports hall for squash, badminton, volleyball and several other indoor sports. And in the same building, there's a new cinema with 6 screens. Then, let me see, in the main square, just 2 minutes' walk from the Metro Tower, there's the Theatre Royal, which often gets London productions on tour. And in the streets nearby, you can find a good range of inexpensive restaurants, including Indian, Chinese, Thai, and Italian.
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a tutor, Dr. Simon, talking to some of his students about writing a dissertation. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen to the discussion and answer questions 21 to 26.
Welcome back to the new term. Hope you've had a good break and that you're looking forward to writing your dissertation. Now, what I'd like to do in this session is give you the opportunity to ask questions on writing the dissertation. Requirements, milestones, who to see when you need help. It's very informal. It may all be written on paper, but it's nice to get it confirmed. So, anything you'd like to ask?
Dr. Simon, is there a fixed hand-in date yet?
Right. I can confirm that that's the 21st of May, not the 20th, as we first stated. Okay? Jane?
What about the word limit?
Well, we try to be pretty flexible on this, but in broad terms, it's 18 to 20,000. And you can choose your topics, anything from years 2 and 3. Yes?
I still haven't got any idea what I want to do it on. Who?
Well, you should see your course tutor to agree on your final title, and you should also be aware that there's a special program running on research methods for anyone who wants some extra help on that.
Can I just check on the deadlines for everything?
Yes, sure. Look, let me write it on the board. When the different stages have to be completed. First of all, you've got to work on your basic bibliography. And that's due in to your course tutor by the 31st of January, which is just 2 weeks away, so you'd better get a move on that.
Do we have to have our own draft plan by then?
No, your draft plan is due on the 7th of February, which is a week later, so that should give you plenty of time.
And when do we have to be doing the research?
That's over a 1-month period, essentially February to March.
And the write-up?
Well, you can't really get going on your writing until you've got quite a bit of the research done. So that's really March to May, with the hand-in date on the 21st. Any more questions?
Now you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the discussion and answer questions 27 to 30.
Well, sir, just some advice, really. It's about computers. Would you advise us to buy one?
What can I say, Andy? I know it's a massive expense, but I really feel it would be of great benefit. You can always look in the student union adverts for second-hand ones. Yes?
I've been looking at some of last year's dissertations.
Oh, is that a good idea, sir? I heard.
Well, I don't think you should read them in detail too early, or you might end up taking more of their ideas than you realise. But yes, it really is the best guide you can have to the expectations of what's expected when you write a dissertation.
Sorry, Jane, I interrupted you.
That's okay. It's just that they did a lot of research using questionnaires. Is that a good idea?
I think questionnaires are very good at telling you how people fill in questionnaires. But to be frank, they tell you very little else. Avoid them.
About interviews, is it okay if we interview you?
The tutors? Well, I don't see why not. They don't have any special contribution to make, but you can if you want. There's a whole section on this issue in the research guide. I'm afraid it's slightly out of date, and you're probably better talking to the tutor on the research methods course. But you might find it useful to start there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, well, great. I hope that's sorted a few things out. You can always come and see me or drop me a note if you've got any more queries.
Right.
Fine.
Okay, thanks.
That is the end of section 3. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecture about the lack of rainfall in Australia. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning. This morning, we are continuing our look at Australia and its natural problems. Actually, dryness, or aridity, as it is generally called by geographers, is probably the most challenging of Australia's natural problems. And so it's very important in this course for you to have a good understanding of the subject. For Australia, water is a precious resource, and its wise management is of the greatest importance. As I've said, Australia is a dry continent, second only to Antarctica in its lack of rainfall. Long hours of hot sunshine and searing winds give Australia an extremely high rate of evaporation, far more than in most other countries. It's estimated that approximately 87% of Australia's rainfall is lost through evaporation, compared with just over 60% in Europe and Africa, and 48% in North America. You generally think of Africa as being a very hot and dry place, but it's not in comparison with Australia. In many parts of Australia, standing water, that is, dams, puddles and so forth, dry up rapidly, and some rainfall barely penetrates the soil. The reason for this is that the moisture is absorbed by thirsty plants. Some parts of Australia are dry because rainwater seeps quickly through sandy soils and into the rock below. In parts of Australia, this water, which seeps through the sandy soil, collects underground to form underground lakes. Water from these subterranean lakes can be pumped to the surface and tapped, and so used for various purposes above the ground. In fact, extensive underground water resources are available over more than half of Australia's land area. But most of the water is too salty to be used for human consumption or for the irrigation of crops. However, most inland farmers do rely on this water for watering their animals and, where possible, to a lesser extent, for irrigation. Underground water can flow very large distances and can be kept in underground reservoirs for a very long time. Water from these underground reservoirs bubbles to the surface as springs in some parts of the country, and these rare sources of permanent water were vital to early explorers of inland Australia and to other pioneers last century who used the springs for survival. But in many places, levels have fallen drastically through continuous use over the years. This has necessitated the pumping of the water to the surface. Remarkably, underground water sources in Australia supply about 18% of total water consumption. So you can see it's quite an important source of water in this dry land. So, most of the consumption of water in Australia comes from water which is kept above ground. More than 300 dams regulate river flows around the country. The dams store water for a variety of functions. The rural irrigation of crops, without which many productive areas of the country would not be able to be farmed. The regulation of flooding, a serious problem which will be dealt with later in the course. And last but not least, the harnessing of the force of gravity for the generation of electricity. That is all we have time for this morning, but you'll be able to do further study on this important area in the library. I have a handout here with references on the subject, so if you're interested, please come up to the desk and take a copy. Next week's lecture is a case study of an outback farm, and it'll be going into detail about some of the problems we've discussed here.
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Cambridge IELTS 2 by the University of Cambridge Local Examination Syndicate. Published by Cambridge University Press, 2000. This recording is copyright. Cassette 2, Side 2. Test 4. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1. Section 1. Paul is renting an apartment. He has some problems with the property and has decided to report them to the housing agency. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 and 2. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good morning. MIC House Agency?
Good morning. I'm ringing about the problems I've been having with my apartment.
Yes, of course. If I can just take a few details first. What's your name?
Paul Smiley.
How do you spell that?
Smiley.
Paul's surname is Smiley, so Smiley has been written in the box. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 1 and 2.
Good morning. MIC House Agency?
Good morning. I'm ringing about the problems I've been having with my apartment.
Yes, of course. If I can just take a few details first. What's your name?
Paul Smiley.
How do you spell that?
Smiley.
Okay. And what's the address?
Apartment 216 Rose Lane.
Rose Lane. And that's in...
In Newton.
Oh, yes, I know the property. Could I just ask, how long is the lease?
It's for 1 year.
Huh? And you moved in?
Last week, on 27th of June.
Fine, thank you.
Before the conversation continues, you have some time to look at questions 3 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 3 to 10.
And what are the problems that you've been having?
Well, no one thing is really dangerous or anything, but, you know, it's just been building up.
Yes, of course.
Well, the first thing is the washing machine. It's been leaking a little and it's beginning to get worse because we have a small child and we really need to get that done straight away.
Okay, that's a washing machine for immediate repair.
And then there's a niggling problem with the cooker.
Mm-hmm.
The door's broken.
Right.
It's nothing serious and it can be used, but if you can send someone over in the next couple of weeks or so, that'd be great.
Fine, I've got that.
Then we are worried about all the windows.
Are they broken?
No, but there are no locks on them. And, you know, with the insurance these days.
Uh-huh. And when would you like those done?
Well, that's not really urgent, but you never know when there's going to be a break-in.
No. We'll get those done for you next week. Don't worry.
And then there's the bathroom light. It's getting quite annoying. It flickers quite badly and it's giving me headaches. I'd really like to get that replaced right away.
That's no problem.
And then the last thing on the list is the kitchen curtains. They're torn.
Oh, right.
We do have quite a few spare ones in stock and can get those to you in the next week, if that's all right with you.
Yes, that'd be fine.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Okay, fine. What we'll do is get someone over to you this afternoon, if you're in.
Well, I'm going to be out for a short time.
Well, you tell us your preferred times.
Well, the best time is about 1 o'clock.
I'll have to check that with him, and if he can't make it then, what would be your second preference?
Any time up to 5 p.m. would be fine.
Okay, I've made a note of that.
Great. Well, thanks very much for your help.
That's fine. Thank you for calling.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That is the end of section 1. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear a recreation officer at a holiday resort telling the guests about their accommodation and the activities available. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 15.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. My name's Jody, and I'm one of the 4 recreation officers here at Rainforest Lodge. My job is to make sure that you all have a great stay here with us and go away feeling relaxed and refreshed. As you can see, we're literally in the middle of nowhere at the lodge. There are no newspapers or TVs, and there's only one phone, and that's in the office. The lodge is a complete get-away-from-it-all experience, a place to unwind and appreciate the world without a lot of interruptions and distractions. From your cabin balcony, you'll find that you can't see anyone else, and the only noise you should hear is the birds. When the luggage comes, one of the guys will take it across to your cabin for you and make sure you know the way back here to the main center for dinner in the restaurant. Dinner will be served in about an hour or so. All the times of each day's activities are printed on the blue sheet you should have got in the information guides that were handed out on the coach. Each explorer trip has a different focus, so it doesn't matter how many you do or on what day, because there's always something new to discover in the rainforest. Tomorrow, I think we've still got places on the Orchid and Fungi tour. This is on foot and takes you to different parts of the rainforest. Or, if you'd prefer, there's the 4-wheel drive tour to the waterfalls. Or the fishing trip, where I promise you we'll catch some lunch. And last but not least, the famous crocodile cruise that leaves at 11 a.m. each day, just in time for the crocodile's lunch. Oh, plenty to choose from here at Rainforest Lodge. Or just sit on your balcony, relax and unwind and enjoy the views. In the evenings, there's the Spotlight Tour, one of my favorites. The Spotlight Tour leaves at sundown and lets you catch a glimpse of some more of the rainforest wildlife as it comes out at dusk to feed. That's a great trip, and if you can, I'd really try to make sure you do it during your stay.
You now have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 16 to 20.
You've chosen to visit the rainforest in March, which is just at the end of the wet season, so you'll soon notice how well the waterfalls are running and also how damp the ground is. Things can tend to get a bit slippery, too, so if you didn't bring any walking boots, I advise you to hire some from the office. You'll also be much better off in long trousers rather than shorts, because they will give your legs more protection. And socks are a good idea, too. There's no need to be nervous of the rainforest, provided that you treat it with respect and common sense. Most of the animals and wildlife are gentle and harmless. There are some venomous snakes to beware of, but really, they're much more frightened of you than you are of them. The other thing is that certain plants can cause irritation if you touch them with bare skin. Well, that's about all for the time being. The guys are here to take you and your luggage to the cabin.
That is the end of section 2. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between a counsellor and a student named John. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully to the conversation and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hello, John. What can I do for you?
Well, I heard about these counselling sessions from a friend doing a science course, and I was really interested. I think they should be compulsory, really.
Well, to be quite honest, John, I think they would be useful for everybody, but, well, everybody has their own way of going about things. I prefer people just to drop in when they can.
Yes.
I find that talking to students about the requirements of a course helps to clarify what needs to be done. I mean, the biggest difference between college and school is that new college students really have to do a lot of work on their own, and it's sometimes useful to get advice on how to take control of your time and work effectively.
Yes. I mean, it seems like a very light workload until assignment time comes, and then I seem to be working all night sometimes. I'm not the only one. It's ridiculous. The resource centre is very good, but it closes so early. It's in the library, and so you think you could use it more. It's a real problem for me.
Well, you're certainly not the only person in that position, as I'm sure you've found. It really comes down to using every available hour in a systematic way. If you do this with a plan, then you'll find that you still have time for yourself and your hobbies as well.
Yeah. I've heard from Thomas that you made him a sort of plan like this, and he's going away for the weekend with all his work handed in, whereas I haven't even started.
I need to find out a few more things about you first. I'll give you this form to fill in about your lectures and things before you leave.
You now have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the conversation and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, what are your main problems?
Well, what most concerns me is I'm still not doing very well in my assignments.
Well, I know that you plan your writing carefully, but this can come to nothing if the assignment doesn't answer the question. That really is the key. You must read the question carefully and give it a great deal of thought before you even start planning or writing your first draft. It's also vital to check your work for errors. Everybody makes them, and they can influence the person marking the work. So, always take time at the end to check what you've written.
As far as listening is concerned, I find it hard to keep up sometimes in lectures, especially 2-hour ones. I sometimes just seem to go off into a dream.
It's a good idea to find out from your lecturers if they mind you recording the lectures. You only need one of those small cassette recorders.
Yeah.
The quality is pretty good, and a second listening can really clarify things. Something else you can do is check your notes with a friend after the lecture.
Yes, that's a good idea. Thanks. It's hard to do all that all the time, though, especially when there's so much reading to do.
Yes. It's important, though, not to confine yourself to reading on your subject. You should also read things of general interest that appeal to you. You know, novels, newspapers, that kind of thing. Do you have a good dictionary?
Not really. I've never bothered with one.
It would probably be a good idea to get one. Dictionaries aren't expensive, and they can help a lot. Also, you can underline or highlight new words, and then you've got a...
That is the end of section 3. You will now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a student talking about his research project in a university tutorial. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the talk and answer questions 31 to 40.
Well, good afternoon. In today's session, John Upton will be sharing some of the findings of his research project from last term. John.
Thanks. Well, first of all, a little bit about the background to the project. Our title, as you can see, is pretty straightforward. Car safety. But these days, there's a lot more to it than the usual injunctions about drinking and driving or speeding. I've been interested and horrified by several newspaper reports on what people call road rage. For example, the famous incident of a man getting out of his car in a car park and hitting the driver of a van who had overtaken him earlier. It seemed to me that there were almost as many serious problems when cars were parked, i.e. were stationary, as when they were travelling at 90 miles an hour. So I decided to make this the focus of the project. For our research, we depended mainly on talking to individuals, asking them questions rather than using written questionnaires. We stopped people at a selected garage on the motorway over a 2-day period and asked them questions about what they'd observed or experienced themselves. Our respondents were both men and women, but the women were just slightly in the majority. We were pleased by the public's willingness to stop and chat to us. In the end, we talked to a total of 135 drivers over those 2 days. So, what were our findings? Well, as you can see, 93% of respondents had had some kind of problem. A surprisingly large percentage, 24%, had had their car damaged in some way. But the main type of incident was being shouted at. 79% had experienced that. 15% had experienced violence on their own persons. They'd actually been hit by someone. The police tended only to be informed when there was physical violence involved. So, what strategies had people developed to ensure their own safety? Let's have a look at the figures here. Well, first of all, it was quite striking that there were often distinct answers from the men and women. It was mainly women, for example, who said one shouldn't ever stop to find out how to get somewhere, whereas it was men who said you should try to avoid looking directly at other drivers. Both men and women... Oh, sorry, no. It was women who said you had to tell someone when you were due to get to a particular destination. Then, I had thought that it would be mainly men, but both sexes made the point that it's much safer to get keys out well in advance as you go towards your car. Men were very aware that muggers or whatever might be concealed behind the car. They also made the point that you should leave plenty of room when you park your car, so you can make a quick getaway if you need to. Finally, locking doors at all times. Men didn't think it was quite as important as women, but both gave it a high safety rating. When we asked them what they thought the best improvements had been in the last 5 years in helping with road rage problems...
That is the end of section 4. You will now have half a minute to check your answers.